All right. Let's get into it.
So, yeah, it's crazy how many people now that I've done this brain retraining work and nervous system work, how I can, I feel like I'm like evaluating people when I meet them. I'm like, okay, well, that's based on this trauma and that's based on that. And oh, you're on autopilot and you're
Yeah.
dysregulated here, and
Yeah.
I don't like call people out on
No, no,
it,
no, no.
like,
Me neither.
like maybe conversation, I'll tell them, oh, these are things that have helped me, or this has helped me with anxiety or something like that. But it's crazy how many people are dysregulated. And I feel like that's just like the new normal.
Yeah. But it is. It is. And and yeah, you're completely right. Like it's dysregulation, it's codependencies, it's perfectionism, it's attachment issues, it's
Yes.
um all the things that and sometimes when you're on this healing journey, you find out more and more and more. And sometimes the more you heal, the more shit you uncover. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, and then the people, and that just some of my clients as well, they will just start feeling like, oh my goodness, like you feel more broken because the more you look, the more there's to
Yeah.
find. And then it's like, oh my goodness, like I also have this, and then I also have this, and now I'm
Yeah.
also like, and you stick all these, and then what hurts me is they start to pick, stick all those labels on themselves. I
Mm-hmm.
am I'm a I'm a codependent, anxiously attached, ADHD, perfectionist, people pleaser, and then
Yeah.
a lot of shame is being piled on top of all of those things. When I'm thinking, oh my goodness, you know, like you're it's not you, it's your programming. And it's your
Yeah.
programming the way it's been programming everybody around you. You're just the one brave enough to become aware of it, which is a win.
Right.
The awareness is a win, not an indictment against your flawed nature.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And
crazy how we seem to get worse before we get better when we're on this healing journey, because it's just like
yeah,
we're at a certain point and we unpack all these things and everything boils to the surface, and now you're having to um break down, like you said, like all this programming.
yeah,
You're having to break down all this programming and
yeah,
learn what is authentic, what isn't, what is a label I've placed on myself, what is a lie that I'm believing
yeah,
that I am using as my identity when it's not actually
yeah.
my identity, you know?
Exactly, because it's not, and it doesn't mean that it's not true. That yes, it's true that you have codependent tendencies or you have anxious attachment issues, but it doesn't define who you are. And you can
Right,
break loose of all of those things, but not if
right,
you attach you to the sticker,
right. Like
because
just
then that
because you have a
becomes a
struggle
new
that,
identification, and then so, oh, I
right,
can't do that because I am, and then sticker,
exactly.
sticker, 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 sticker.
Exactly. So you're living by that structure because that's the
Yeah.
label that you place on yourself. Like you can't think outside of that structure. Like, oh, I can
Yeah,
only react this way because I'm a codependent. No, you can
no,
react differently, and that's okay. And that's still authentic to you.
yeah, and it's the same with all of the diagnoses. They become like new boxes. Like, oh, I can't do that because I've got Lyme disease, or I can't do that because I'm allergic to
Yeah.
such and such. And I'm thinking, well, that's just your current. It may be your current reality and something, label somebody stuck on your forehead. But if you didn't know
Yeah.
what it was, would you still have it? Like, it's because I
That's
think
true.
a lot
Yeah.
of people wind up living down to their label instead of
Yeah.
living up to their own vision for themselves.
That's good. That's really good. Yeah, that is true. That is true. It's like once you put the label on yourself, you're dragging yourself down. It's never like an empowering thing to put the label on
No,
yourself. I think it's a false sense of empowerment at first because you feel
yeah,
like, oh, I figured
it,
something out. Now I
exactly.
understand myself, you know?
Yes. Yeah. So it takes you from powerlessness to a little bit of clarity, and that gives you relief for like a little bit, but then it's like now you fall back down because now you feel insecure because now I can't do XYZ because of that label. And now I have now I can't even anticipate in the future because I'm going to have this for the rest of my life. And then it starts boxing you in even more, and you feel more trapped and confined by your body, and then more resentment towards your body builds, and then, oh, hey, I've got a new diagnosis.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Oh
think
my
that,
gosh.
and for me, and I think the one thing, and don't get me wrong, because I love primal trust and there's so much goodness being offered, but the one thing that I feel is missing, and the one that I would want to advocate for people to start with, is to practice the hell out of compassion.
Yeah.
Compassion is key, because you have to become, in order to heal, you have to become aware of what's there. But if you become aware of what's there and you lay on top of that the patterns, just the trained patterns of judgment, and then shame, and then shame about the shame, and judgment about the judgment, and resistance to
Yeah.
the resistance, that just makes it all such a tangled mess. But when you learn, like, oh, it's not me, it's my programming, and it's not
Yeah.
my parents' fault or my parents' fault, it's not my society's fault, but all of those things contributed to me thinking and believing in a certain way that caused my body to break down. And now I have to deal with this circumstance.
Yeah.
And there's nobody to blame, there's no one at fault, definitely not me. But now that I've got this, how can I work with it? But that process is becoming so complicated, because we first have to, because there's so much judgment and so much shame, that when
Yeah.
then with the shame, with the pattern of shame, you can't really let yourself see it. So then there's only a little bit of layer that you can see, and then the rest is being suppressed because, oh, I'm fine, or I have this, but I'm working toward it, because you're not letting yourself meet that layer of shame. And I think
Mm-hmm.
and because the shame response is in of itself just a learned response, like you learn something about yourself, like, oh, it's me, I should have done differently, now I've done it to myself. Enter shame.
Yeah. Well, it's like you only know what you know. And I think that once you have this new realization, you have to kind of forgive yourself for the things that you didn't know before,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that you've learned something new, and now we can make different choices.
And that's what
Now
I
that we
mean with
have new
compassion.
information, yeah, exactly. We have new information, and we can let go of the shame. We can forgive ourselves, and we can know that,
Yeah,
this wasn't our fault. This is just
yeah.
the
and
result
and
of all these different complexities.
yeah, and the judgment response is still going to happen, because again, that is one of the many trained responses. Like, something happens, instant judgment.
Yeah.
And then there's resistance, because our brains are hardwired to resist pain and seek pleasure. So there's something uncomfortable, let me get away from it. But then when you're on the healing journey for more than 5 minutes, and you realize, like, oh, it's actually not my emotion that's the problem, but it's my resistance to it. Oh, let me now resist my resistance, because that's now the problem.
Yes.
But then
Oh gosh. Yeah.
because so now the resistance is, oh no, I shouldn't have resistance, because now the resistance is making it worse. But now my awareness of my resistance, the fact that my resistance is making it worse, now I'm resisting that. So it becomes
That's
this
funny.
very complicated cocktail. And when you really become practiced at compassion through the lens of understanding that, hey, it's not me, it's my programming, you can dissolve so much if you could just really integrate and embody, it's not me, it's my programming. And
Yeah.
not to then blame the programming, because the program's the program, we're all running by it, it's fine. I mean, it's not fine, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's just input that you have to deal with. But it's like, okay, so the program's my program. So what do I choose now? Entry point now. Forget,
Yeah.
let go of the past, stop
Right.
overlaying the past on top of the future. What choice do I have now? That's empowerment.
And that it is so powerful when you can finally just embrace the current moment. Okay, what am I going to do right here, right now, in this moment? I'm not going to focus on the past. I'm not going to dwell on what could be in the future. I mean, there is benefits to focusing on positive things in the future, but I think that
Yeah.
when you can find a way to just be present, um,
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
freeing.
but I think that the way to use the future in my book is um to use the future as a way to enjoy your now by just playing around with a future scenario that you actually like. That's a great
Uh-huh.
way to enjoy your now. But what our brains do is just project all our fears onto the future and
Right.
expect the worst of our past to happen again. So
Right.
that's using the future in a way to screw up your now, when you can also use the future as a way to enjoy your now. Because there's nothing wrong with just playing with a future visualization. That doesn't need to take away from your now. It can elevate and enhance your now. It's just that, it's just which side of the coin you're on. Are you just playing with potential as something that might happen, that would thrill you and delight you, and you can just play now with that idea? Or is it that I'm projecting all of my fears and worst nightmares onto the future and I'm creating anxiety?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think so many people, that's so many people, and that's their thing, is just living in this state of fear, whether it be in the moment or whether it be in the future. But I just think that, especially nowadays, and the time that we live in now, I think that it's just fear is something that's plaguing everyone to in some sort of capacity,
Of
you
course.
know?
And I think that and there's nothing even wrong with that, because, you know, we're gonna have we're gonna have to navigate fear for the rest of our lives, because if you don't have
Yeah.
fear, you're basically pathological something. But it's how do you respond to your fear? Like, can you befriend your fear? Can you meet your fear? Can you take your fear by the hand and not like feel the fear, do it anyway, by a way of, you know, pushing and overriding the part of you that's afraid? But can you honor the part of you that's afraid, and then explain to that part, like, hey, I get that you're afraid based on what happened in the past, but
Yeah.
I've really looked into this scenario, and I have decided that we're safe, because I don't need the future to play out any one particular way in order for me to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm
It's
gonna try and visualize this, and I'm gonna try and manifest this, but if it doesn't happen, and in fact the worst happens, I'm still gonna be okay. And that sends a signal of safety from within, to not that it will eliminate fears, but it will, soften your fears enough for you to just keep moving.
I think that it takes some of the power away from the fear at that point when you can look at it from that perspective. And it's a
Yeah.
crazy concept to think about, because I think a lot of people would say, like, okay, well, how do you talk to your fear? Your fear is like an emotion, it's not a person. But I think that, like, when you're focusing on something like fear and you envision talking to your past self or your childhood self, depending on when and where that fear stemmed from, you're like almost like going back in time and giving yourself a pep talk and comforting
Yeah.
yourself and giving yourself the emotional connection and needs that you had at that time that maybe weren't met. And that's why you're still holding on to that fear.
Yeah, but
It's,
that's why it's there, and that's why I love parts work, is
yeah,
because there is like what Dr. Cat calls memory structure that sometimes gets triggered, and then in that moment, if you're willing to look, then it's like, oh wow, like part of me feels like 5 years old right now.
yeah,
And then you can act, because in that part of you is stuck in the past, and is like reliving something that was really painful in the moment, and is scared that it's going to happen again, scared that it's going to be alone, be abandoned, be rejected.
yeah.
Usually one of those, usually one of those two, like, because even
Hmm.
when fear of failure, the only reason to fear failure is because you were afraid that it will then lead to rejection or abandonment. So it's
Yeah,
usually one of those two. Um, and it has experienced that, because we all have. And then it's like, oh, yeah, well, of course you're afraid. Of course you're afraid you're going to be rejected and abandoned. But it's my job to learn to not reject and abandon myself anymore. That's the.
yeah. And I think a lot of this stuff is kind of like, it's a practice, because
Yeah.
I think that let's say if somebody's hearing this for the first time, this concept is probably just over their head. Like, this is way too deep. How do I even think about these things? How can I break, just my normal structure of thinking to think this deeply? And I think that over time, when you start learning self-awareness and you learn to decipher your thoughts and to pick them apart and dig deeper on where they're coming from, I feel like it's a practice that
Yeah.
happens over time, and a
Yes.
little by little it starts expanding and opening to where
Yeah.
you're understanding things on a
Yeah.
deeper level.
For sure. For sure. And I think that the thing to cultivate is, again, compassion. But when you're not there yet, you can start with curiosity, just by
Uh-huh.
being willing to, I wonder what that's about. Like, I wonder why I'm scared. Instead
Right.
of instead of coming at it with fix it drive,
Right. I always
Because
say, like, if you're triggered by something, just stop and breathe for a second and think, why am I triggered?
yeah,
Have I felt this feeling? What's the feeling I'm feeling right now? Have I felt this feeling before? Can I connect a memory to this feeling? When did this happen? What was it? And what made me feel this way? Just really stopping. I think that, like, if you pause, I think that's the most important thing. You just pause in
yeah,
the moment. Don't just
mm,
continue on like, okay, oh, I'm triggered. Pause, breathe, and evaluate.
yeah,
Why am I triggered? Where is this coming from? Because 9 out of 10, it's not based on the current situation that's happening that you feel
yeah.
triggered by.
And I
It's
think you
connected to
can
something.
even simplify it even more for people who don't really have the language or something to pick apart, like, well, what does it take me back from, and what memory is that?
Uh-huh.
Is to, as you said, like, start with pause, breathe, and then just, because even if you just breathe, put a hand on your heart and send a little love or a little attention to the part of you that is like, okay, part of me is feeling scared, or part of me is feeling angry or hurt or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Can I just sit with that part of myself and just breathe and just signal to myself it's okay to feel this way?
Yeah.
That alone just dissolves so much, because with that you're kind of, um well, befriending is maybe a too big a word, but you're stopping the fight against it, and you don't, because even the,
Yeah.
oh, I wonder what this is about, can actually become another fix it drive. Like, oh, let me dig to the bottom of this, and oh, what's below that? What's below that? If you do that from
Yeah.
that fix it mindset, you're still not going to really find it, because it's the very question is born from resistance, and that doesn't create safety in the system. So you're not even going to really get the right answers. So I think that for me, just can I just give space to this? Can I just give this permission to be a little bit? Can I just breathe and just allow that part of me to be afraid? Because I recognize that who I am is so much bigger than just this fear. And when
Yeah.
I work with my clients, I use the Sedona method a lot in my work. And that is basically a way of welcoming emotion and then choosing to let it go. And then you actually let it go,
Yeah.
process. But the visual that I often use, that clients often respond to, is like, picture your heart, slowly expanding to the size of a cathedral, and just imagine that there's this hurt inside, and maybe fear inside, and maybe resistance to it inside, and all of that you can feel. But because you know that who you are is this vast cathedral, and there's so much room around these parts, that it becomes easier to hold instantly, because now you're
Yeah.
not afraid of that taking you over and becoming too much, because then you start, because when the fear becomes louder because it's being resisted, and then you resist it some more, and like, oh, and then it's a full-blown panic attack, and then
Yeah.
the fear completely takes you over, and then you start believing the story even more,
Hmm.
um, and then then it's really hard to come back from. But when you can just, okay, let me just be with this fear. Let me imagine my heart space to just be vast like a cathedral. And let me just welcome this little part of me, this little, like, 4-year-old self or 8-year-old self, whatever it is. And you don't have to even figure that out. But this young version of me who's feeling scared or upset for whatever reason. And let me just signal to that part, you know what? It's okay that you're upset. It's okay.
Yeah.
And that dissolves so, so much, because with that you're signaling safety to yourself, that allows that part to breathe, and you're already signaling to that part like, hey, I'm okay right now.
I think that there's so much power in just the simple concept of recognizing what it is that you feel and processing that and taking a moment to accept, like you said, you're just kind of accepting it, that it's okay that you feel this right now. But
Yeah,
then I think that moving forward and knowing like this isn't my identity, this is
yeah,
okay that I feel this right now. Now, but now I'm going to focus on what my identity is. That's kind of what I do when I lead journaling, and also when I do the meditations. So through the journaling, I'll have people write down things that maybe are their fears, or things that come up, and so they're putting it on paper. They're recognizing it in the moment, and then I have us go over like affirmations. Okay, like what's your identity in Christ? Like what does God say about you? Who are you?
mm,
You're loved, you're worthy, you're chosen, all these things. And I feel like that kind of helps bring your emotions through that process. So you're able to move through the
yeah,
pain,
yeah,
fear, and come out on the other side knowing that this isn't something that I have to carry with me. And the
yeah,
same thing with the meditations is just kind of, doing like visualizations, um, of letting go, of surrendering, of,
hmm,
of comforting yourself and recognizing that this is where you're at, but this isn't
yeah.
where you have to stay.
I love that. And I love that perspective of how, like, hey, this isn't the way God sees you. Because that's such
Right.
a beautiful entryway to compassion. Because if God wouldn't judge you, why would you judge you?
Yeah.
Do you know better than God?
Right, right. No, that's good. Do you know better than God? Exactly, exactly. Like God doesn't see you this way. So
Yeah,
whatever you think about yourself doesn't have the last say. God's the one
yeah,
that created you. It's not like,
yeah,
oh well, okay, God, I know you see me this way, but because I'm feeling this way, the way you see me is a lie, and now the way
yeah.
that I
Let
feel
me just
is
instruct God that, you know
yeah,
what? I think God, I think you saw, I think you messed up there a little bit.
yeah, exactly.
And
That's
but that's a beautiful entryway to again compassion, because then it's like, and even if you're not religious, it's, you can even just say, what does your higher self think about you, or how do you think the universe views you, or and there's so many beautiful ways to yeah, start looking at yourself through a different lens.
right. Looking at yourself through a different lens. Exactly. Exactly. And I think that, yeah, anybody, no matter what your background is, anybody can do that.
Yeah,
Not everything, you're
yeah,
not, you're not bound to be doomed. You're not bound to be trapped in depression. You're not bound to be
no,
all these negative things that you think about yourself. Like that's not the end of the story.
yeah, exactly, because you get to write your story.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had this meme like stuck on my phone for a little while. I change it every once in a while because at some point you forget it's there. But one of my favorites during a very anxious part of my life was like, I trust the next chapter because I know the author. It's like,
Yeah.
oh yes, because I get to write my own story. So of course I can trust the next chapter, because I get to decide, I get to choose what that looks like.
Yeah. That's good.
I'm loving this conversation, but I'm very aware of the clock because I need to hop off in
Yeah.
10 minutes to get ready for another call. But
Yeah.
let's continue this conversation on a live. But what angle should we choose? Like, do you want to focus on a particular topic? Do we want to just go with the flow like this, because it's going to be interesting no matter what?
And yeah, because I feel like me and you, we can talk very deep, like on like
Yeah,
deep things, very complex things, and which like I think that that's great for people who have been in the programs and maybe have a lot of self-awareness, but for people who
yeah.
are just jumping in, they're going to be like, what the heck are they talking about?
I
You
love
know?
that. So let's see if we
So
can like strip it back and
like
talk about
simplify
it.
it a little bit more.
Simplify. Yeah. And we can help each other do that. Like when I'm going a little deeper, just, cut me off, and just, I'm welcoming you. Just say, hey, well, can you like zoom out a little bit, and give everybody a chance to hop on.
I think the concept of self-awareness, like we can really
Yeah.
hit it from different angles. tools, you know,
Yeah.
and we can simplify it like, okay, well, what are the tools that you can use to even like recognize, to stop and evaluate your thoughts, like how we were saying, like stop and breathe and recognize like where is this coming
Yeah.
from, and you know, and how powerful self-awareness is, and how once you recognize where these things are coming from, that
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
you have like power over it, and then you can recognize that this
Yeah.
isn't your identity, that you know, so
Yeah.
kind of like your self-awareness and your identity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that what we talked about earlier about, that being able to, because the practice, the place that I would, if somebody started on like day one of exploring, like, oh, hey, maybe I can be a self-healer and do my own inner work, then the place that I would start is, as you say, like practice awareness and practice um non-judgment in what you observe. Like become just like a curious observer of
Uh-huh.
what your inner environment is. Like, can you look at yourself from just curiosity of, I sometimes just ask clients to
Yeah.
just imagine being like a scientist with a clipboard, and you're just noting like, oh, what is that? Oh, there's emotion. What is that? Oh, it's thought. Instead of going with the whole narrative of trying to, oh, what is this emotion? Where is it coming from? And do I need to blame my mother? It's
Yeah.
more like, okay, can I just become aware of the emotion and then just, you know, notice, oh yeah, that's an emotion. And then maybe, well, what emotion is it? And start with the umbrella ones. Am I mad, sad, glad, or happy? Is it,
Right.
and then just, okay, I think I'm feeling a little upset. Okay, upset. Oh, I'm feeling upset. And can you just
Hmm.
let that be okay for a minute? Because even with just that, and then let the further exploration of, where is that coming from and what does it remind me of? I think that's already step two. That's already
Right.
like graduation to another class.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. That is true. But yeah, I think that's such a good foundation for everybody to learn. So yeah,
Yeah.
we could definitely base it off of that, off of just self-awareness and what does that look like.
Yeah. And I think we could still explore some examples of what you're saying with, where does that come from? Because I had this awareness and then I thought, oh, right, that's because when I was 8, I had this experience and it led me to believe that X, Y, and Z. And now I'm becoming aware of that because it's playing a role in my life still. Okay.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, I think that's good. I think we should go that direction. So I think that um if you want to send me a picture of yourself or your logo or whatever you would want to use to advertise yourself, and then I can send you something. If you want to make a graphic to like promote our live, and then I'll make one too. So that way we each have something that kind of fits our brand, so we could put it on our page,
Yeah.
and then we can come up with the title. Like the title can be um, either maybe exploring self-awareness, or
Hmm.
recognizing self-awareness, or self-awareness how to, or something like that. So we
Yeah.
can talk in messages on like how we want to word that, so then we
Yeah.
can get a
Yeah.
flyer going,
Let's.
because we're going live in like a week, so
Right.
we
Because
can.
we had picked a date for that. Can you remind me?
Yeah, so it's like exactly a week. Yeah, so that way um we can try to get this done in the next few days so we can post and start advertising. I mean, I could make a graphic like really quick. I'm pretty quick on Canva making those, but that way I just have enough time, because not everybody sees every time you share something on your stories or even on your feed.
Right.
That
Yeah.
way we have
I
time
had
to
hoped
repost a few times.
I had hoped that I had launched my brand by this time so that I could do it in like my brand theme, but I'm not gonna have time. Like I needed more time to get ready. Um, but we have a week from today. Okay, great. Looking forward to it.
Yep.
And do you know how
Yeah.
to like record it and everything so that it stays on? So that you can like
So
save
I believe I
save
looked
it
up,
and
and
post it to our feeds?
So this is the thing, like I looked up on how to save a live afterwards, but then the last live that I did, I couldn't find that option. So I'm thinking if I can't find the option again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to download a screen record app, and then I'm going to record from the screen record app as I'm doing the live. So
I
either
love that.
way, I'm going to find a way to record it so I have
Yeah,
that. I know that if you share it, you can keep it on your feed. So that way, when we do a live together, you can keep it on your feed. And so it'll stay on
yeah,
there until you delete it and it'll look like a reel. But, we want to record it so we can chop it up if we want to.
yeah.
And we can
And I
put
want to
little
put it on my
clips.
YouTube channel. And
Exactly. On
once I do
shorts.
launch my brand, I can expose this conversation again by just saying, hey, like a month ago, I did this great conversation with Summer Barker, and this is what we talked
Yeah.
about. Come check it out. And by the way, Summer has, I don't know, this offer or, this group,
Right.
and we
Right.
can like cross.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, if we can get them recorded, because then we can utilize our conversations for as much as we possibly can to help
Yeah,
people on all different platforms. So,
love it. Love
okay.
it. This was such a great conversation.
I know this was good.
I really love meeting you. I
So
look forward to talking
I'll
again.
touch base with you.
And let's continue in the WhatsApp chat to like hash things
Okay.
out in detail and get ready for next week.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. It was good talking to you.
Good talking to
All
you.
right. Bye.
Bye.